Alright, what's up y'all? Welcome back. Today we're going to be doing some more pattern testing, but with this. This is a late 80s, early 90s Remington 1187 Premier. This is probably my #1 shotgun. Hunted everything, killed just anything you can imagine with it. I mean, this is my shotgun when I go out and use a shotgun. Up on top, we have a Pinty little reflex red dot sight. It's only like 30 bucks or something on Amazon. The gun shoots low. I do know that if I use the bead sight. So a couple years ago I decided to pick one of these up and throw it on there, and have not had any issues whatsoever with it since. Alright, for the load that we're shooting today, it's going to be these. The 12 gauge Longbeard XR 3-inch 1 7/8 ounce of number 6s. And as for what chokes we're going to be using, I've got 3 today. First, I'm going to shoot the factory Remington full choke that came with the gun to see what happens with a little bit more open constriction. Second, I've got a Colonial choke tube. This is the RCTK2, which is their extra full turkey choke. It's a 675 constriction, which is a little bit on the open side for a 12 gauge turkey choke, but not as open as this full choke. So we'll see how these pattern, since there's not very many of them online, to see how they pattern. And the third choke I've got is this. This is a Kicks Gobblin Thunder 655 constriction. This is a little bit tight for a 12 gauge. Usually a lot of people run 660 to 665 range. So I wanted to try this out and see if this is too tight for the 6s, or if these Longbeard 6s actually like a little bit more constriction, like I suspect they probably will. As per usual, the targets are set up right behind the camera at 40 yards exactly from my bench. As far as the weather today, for lead, it's about 55 degrees with a very slight breeze coming in from the right to the left across the targets. I don't think it's really going to affect anything today, but as far as temperature conditions, lead likes a little bit warmer temperature than stuff like TSS does. So this is a pretty close representation to those early season morning gobblers that you might be chasing after, you know. It's at 55 degrees, slight wind, just perfect turkey weather. So let's get set up and see what these things will do. Alright, first up, we're at 40 yards, and I'm going to be shooting the full choke. So let's see what that one can do. Alright, now we're back at 40 yards still with the Colonial extra full 675 turkey choke. Alright, finally we have the Kicks Gobblin Thunder 655. So let's see what that one can put on the paper. Okay, so first up, walking up to these, my marker's a little bit out of ink, so you'll just have to excuse that, but I think we can still see what we're trying to see. This is the Longbeard 6s with the full choke, the factory full choke. It's a little bit high, which I think is just my red dot, but as you can see, it's a pretty open pattern. It's still a turkey killing pattern, no doubt. But it's a very open pattern. Not a whole ton of flyers necessarily. You got 1 or 2 down here, but it's a pretty even pattern. It's just really open, which might be what you're looking for. But for this, I would say look at a different choke, unless you're talking 30 yards and in, and be mindful of other turkeys that are really close to the bird you're after, because you run a risk of hitting 2 or 3 at a time if they're packed in close. All right, now we're looking at the Colonial Extra Full 675 choke tube. Once again, a little bit high, which I believe that's just my red dot. I'll have to bring that down just a touch, I think. As you can see, it's definitely tighter than your factory full choke, but you do have flyers down around the bottom there, and you do have some voids right around his head area. I don't like voids personally. I like my patterns even across the board. So I still think the Colonial 675 is a little bit too open for those number 6s. All right, now here's the Kicks. As you can see, drastic improvement. I aimed right at the base of his neck area, so it is definitely a red dot just to being a little bit high, but that's not a big deal at all. I'll adjust that. There's definitely some flyers around the edge, so I think the 655 might be a little bit too tight for these 6s. I think something like a Kicks 660 would be just money with this setup. But I can tell you for sure right now that these Longbeard 6s out of that 1187 really like the Kicks chokes. I would not have an issue at all taking that into the woods, not even in the slightest. I mean, this is 40 yards, and even though I don't really shoot birds past 40 yards, some people like to field hunt, and you could probably get out to 50, maybe 60 with that pattern with the right setup. Absolutely. So here's all three in one frame so you can kind of compare. The full choke is on the left, the Colonial 675 is in the middle, and the Kicks 655 is on the right. And out of these three, I am definitely going with the Kicks. Well, all right, what do y'all think? You going just keeping your stock full? You looking at something a little bit more open like the Colonial, or going with the 655 Kicks? I mean, out of these three, I'm sticking with my Kicks. I know that shoots really well out of that gun, and it just performs. It always has, no matter what shell I've shot through it. But I'd really like to see what a Kicks 660 or a 665 could do with those shells out of that gun, because I think those could be the ticket. I think this might be just the slightest little bit on the tight side for these 6s. But as usual, let me know what you think about them. Which one would you go with? Have you used any of these? Which one do you hunt with, if so? Which one do you prefer? And with that being said, I'll see y'all in the next one.